Hi, everybody. Welcome to Physician in the Kitchen. I'm your host, Dr. Monique, the plant-based physician you know as a physician in the kitchen. I help people discover, cook, and eat delicious plant-based foods because my mission is to fix America's health one plate at a time. I'm so excited for you to join me today. Today, we are going to be making a gluten-free matcha cookie. Now, if you don't know, matcha is basically made from green tea. It's a powder. It's typically used to make a type of Japanese tea, but it's also useful as an ingredient in desserts. And so we're going to be using it today to make a beautiful green cookie. Since this cookie is gluten-free, we are going to be using a rice flour. Now, before you say, rice flour, where do I get that? It's not as hard as you think. We are actually going to just be repurposing some sushi rice. You heard me, sushi rice, to make this recipe. Don't worry, it'll all make sense in a little while. But before we get into that, be sure to do all the things. Click like, share, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our plant-powered content. I recently hosted a holiday party, and at least one or two of my guests were gluten-free. So I wanted to make a beautiful cookie that was, of course, gluten-free, but was also green to celebrate the holiday. So there are other holidays that use the color green, such as St. Patrick's Day and even Mardi Gras. So you can use this recipe more than once. The other thing I love about this recipe is it allows me to use one of my kitchen gadgets because I'm going to be making the flour myself. So let me show you how easy it is. Did you know that you can use a coffee grinder to make a gluten-free flour at home? Use any grain such as rolled oats, rice, quinoa, ancient grains, and dried chickpeas. Measure the desired amount and place it in the grinder, then pulse until fine and powdery. Depending on the size of the grinder, you may have to work in batches. Here I did the extra step of sifting to make sure I didn't have any large or uneven particles in my finished product. And don't worry, coffee grinders can be pretty inexpensive. Check out the link for the one that I'm using. This is the rice that I used for my flour. So basically sushi grade rice. That's all you need. You can get this in the local Asian store. All right, so just like a typical cookie recipe, we are going to cream our butter and our sugar first. And I am using some cane sugar, which is vegan. So we're going to go ahead and start to process our butter. It's been out at room temperature, so it's nice and soft. And plant butter doesn't take long to soften. So this is one of those recipes, if you forget to take out your butter, don't worry. 10-15 minutes on the counter, you should be good to go. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add in the sugar and turn up the speed. We're going to pause it just to scrape down, make sure that the butter and sugar are really coming together nicely. Give this a couple more minutes. So once our butter and our sugar are creamed, we need to go ahead and sift our dry ingredients. So here is our lovely rice flour that we made. And I like sifting it because that way I know all the ingredients are really well combined. We're going to add also some cornstarch. And mind you, this is gluten-free, so we're doing things that are going to build that cookie structure. Our beautiful matcha. Look how beautiful and vibrant that is. And this is what I use. You want to get the one that says culinary grade because there's a whole ceremonial grade tea, which we don't need for our purposes. So you can look for culinary grade matcha. You can also use it to make your tea, which is one of my favorite teas. I'm obsessed with matcha tea, so multiple uses. We've got some salt. We've got some baking powder and baking soda. All right, we're going to give these a little sift here. And what I like to do to help speed things along is use a spatula. Or in this case, the scraper that came with the sifter. All right. So this way I know all my ingredients are going to be well incorporated. So this cookie comes together very quickly. Probably the longest part of this recipe is letting it chill in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. So what I do during that time while my cookies are chilling is I turn my oven on, because it takes my oven a while to warm up to the true temperature. And here's where I'm going to put in a plug for an oven thermometer, because if your oven is like mine, it will say that it is a certain temperature and it's really not. It can be off by as much as like 50 degrees. So that's just a plug for a thermometer. And we'll include a link for you to look at the one that I like to use. So there is our well mixed flour. Now we're going to come back over here to our wet ingredients. So we can see how our butter and flour, we want to make sure they're nice and fluffy. And I'm going to use my cute little Physician in the Kitchen spatula to scrape down the sides. This is the perfect size spatula when you have like a small jar you want to get clean, or you don't need a big, huge, regular size spatula. So we will include the link for that as well. All right, so now our butter and sugar are nice and creamy, and we're going to add in the vanilla because you can't make cookies without vanilla. And we are using applesauce. Remember, these are vegan or plant-based cookies. So we're going to add applesauce, which is going to take the place of our egg here. So it's going to give it some moisture. It's also going to help with the final texture to keep it from drying out. So let's go ahead and mix that. Stop and scrape. All right, now we're going to add in our matcha mix. And then we're going to mix this just until it's combined before we pop it in the fridge. So I mentioned I made these at a party. And so my girlfriend, Kim, was so impressed with these cookies. She actually requested that I make another batch. So I will have to be sure she gets one of these, or at least maybe 4 or 5. Let's turn it on low. So our flour doesn't go flying. And I love the smell of matcha. It's an earthy smell and taste, which I happen to like. So it's a great new ingredient for me. But look at the color of that. I really like that. It's beautiful. You get green cookies, and we're not using any food dye or food coloring at all natural. And I have my other girlfriend, Erica, to thank for introducing me to matcha. I went to her house in Atlanta once, and she's a very, very serious tea aficionado. She actually even gave me a beautiful tea set. But she made me a professional cup of tea in her home with this matcha, and I was obsessed ever since. All right, so we're gonna just put this in the refrigerator. I'm gonna leave it right in this mixing bowl, sit it in my fridge for about 30 minutes, and then we're gonna come back and make some cookies. All right, so we're gonna cover this with a little bit of plastic wrap to keep out any refrigerator odors. Not that I think my refrigerator has odors, but hey. All right, here we go. Let's go over to the refrigerator. So to add to the greenness of our cookie, we're actually going to roll them in a little bit of matcha sugar, which is just a little bit more matcha that we're going to mix with some sugar. And this is just optional. You can, of course, skip this part if you want to lower the amount of sugar that you're getting. But matcha does have an earthy taste. And so if you want to add a little sweetener to it, I recommend this. All right, so we're going to go ahead and prep our pan. Now, this is a little trick I learned. Ball up your parchment paper, and it helps it to lie down flat. It may sound kind of counterintuitive. Why would I ball it up to make it lie flat? But it works. And the other thing you do too is put some water on the bottom of your pan and then put the paper down like that. Okay, so here is our cookie dough right out of the fridge. And remember, chilling it just helps it not spread as much once we put it on our baking sheet. The butter will spread, and if you want to keep your shape, you want to refrigerate it first. So the cool thing too that I like about this recipe when using the applesauce is that, again, I mentioned that it adds moisture and helps with the texture to be soft because it adds water and natural pectin, which is basically structure that helps the cookies be soft. But it also works as a fat replacement, so it can kind of replace a little bit of the oil that you would normally use in a cookie, or butter. Gives a little bit of natural sweetness. I actually used an unsweetened applesauce, but if you wanted to use a sweetened applesauce, that would be a source of sugar, so you could cut back on sugar somewhere else. As I mentioned, it is a binder as well. Since we're not using eggs, it does help with binding. And then it's just a nice flavor balance for the matcha. Again, matcha is kind of earthy, so applesauce has a nice fruity taste that kind of balances that really well without tasting extra appley, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to just use some of these gloves. I admit these are not the best gloves for this, but I have them, and I want to just use something to keep my hands kind of clean. So this is probably about a tablespoon or so size scoop. So we're going to go ahead and get that, roll it into a ball, roll it around in my little sugar mix. and put it on my baking sheet. And actually what I'm going to do is just do half of the cookies in the sugar. The whole thing doesn't have to be rolled. So finding ways to enjoy without overdoing it. So just going to plop that down. Give it just a little roll. So this is another one of those great recipes that the kiddos can help you with. Have fun in the kitchen and learn about plant-based cooking. How cool is that? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of these done. And then we'll put them in our oven that has been heated to 340 degrees. So we're using a lower temperature oven because matcha doesn't like hot heat. So we're gonna use a lower than our typical 350. All right, so there are our 20 cookies. We've got a little bit left over for another batch, but let's go ahead and get these in the oven. I'm actually going to drop it down to 335, a little bit lower temp for about 12 minutes. We'll check it at 12 minutes and see how they look. All right, so there they are in the oven and right at 340 or so. All right, so our cookies are out of the oven. We're gonna let them cool for another 5 minutes on our baking sheet. But basically what you're looking for are your edges are just set, a little bit of a dome shape there. And then your top is pretty much set. It might be a little soft, but they're gonna continue to firm up as they cool. So we're gonna let them sit here and then we'll transfer them to a cookie cooling rack. All right, guys, it's time for my favorite part of every episode, the taste testing. The cookies have cooled and now it's time to give them a try. So you can see this is a very light and tender crumb cookie. That's because, again, remember, we use gluten-free rice flour. If you make this with a whole wheat, you're going to get a different crumb, but let's try it. I like it. So this is not a sweet cookie. If you're looking for a sweet cookie, this is not it. But this is still very satisfying. This would be perfect with tea or coffee or just on its own. It's very matcha forward. So if you like matcha, this cookie is for you. So this recipe can be tweaked however you like. If you want to add more moisture to it, I would add a little bit of aquafaba or maybe even a flax egg to help binding and help give it a little bit more moisture. But this is delicious, guys. And, you know, I just love this beautiful green color from the matcha. So be sure if you make this recipe to tag me at Physician in the Kitchen. Let me know if you tried it. So thank you so much for watching this episode. Be sure to do all the things. Click share, like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our plant-based content. Until next time, guys, I'm Dr. Monique, Physician in the Kitchen, telling you to keep it 100. Plant-based, that is. Eat well.